Family, community, and nature. Let's tell the story. Energy is eternal delight. Energy that is made available to us by living things, on the other hand, is made available to us not as an inconceivable quantity, but as a conceivable pattern. Food, our source of energy, is the one thing that fastens us to nature and all its bounty. The way we find, create, and consume it has changed drastically over time. Yet fundamentally, understanding nature's power and complexity has become a facet of our own survival. Nature's eternal delight gave humans the energy to develop into who we are today. At the epicenter of all we have created is community and culture. This led me to wonder whether this connection to nature is simply our need for food, or is simply an innate fondness of community and family. Why do we consider farming, scavenging, fishing, or any form of collecting food as a more pure connection to nature? Can it simply be our need for food? Or is there something innate, something that connects us and binds us more closely to nature? This film took me on a journey, reading nature writers, meeting with farmers, and talking to community members in an attempt to answer these questions. In a sense, I've always felt a connection between farming and nature, something that seemed deep and rich. Yet farming seems like a dominating force over nature, reaping nature of energy, diversity, nutrients, and of our precious ecosystems. Wendell Berry has suggested that nature intersects with humans most concretely and clearly in farming. The complex connections in nature, community, and culture peak, overlap, and take up the living space he calls the commonplace. In a healthy culture, these connections are complex. We can understand them only after we acknowledge that they should be harmonious. Family. It is the most basic and fundamental connection we have. A person can be passionate about family when all else is lost. Those stories of family and nature keep the connection strong.
Growing up, I grew up in a very rural area, and we grew all of our own food. We had orchards and gardens, and our family, we all worked together along with the neighbors, growing the food and harvesting the food. So we had potatoes, and we had a potato field, and everybody in the community gathered together, and we planted the potatoes, and then one day in the summer we got together and we cultivated the potatoes. And the same thing with the corn. We harvested the corn all together, and my grandmother, my grandfather lived very, very close to us. We would shuck the corn and freeze the corn, and it was a whole day's worth of work where we all worked together to do that. So I think that really made an impression with me at a young age, where today, now, I want to share that with my children. And they help in picking the tomatoes, and we take the tomatoes and we make sauce with the tomatoes. So it is part of my family. It's not easy work, it's hard work, but it's such enjoyable work. When I'm shoveling soil, there's nothing better. I just love the feeling of putting that soil into a garden and knowing that that soil is going to grow the food that I'm going to put into my body. So I'd like to, pass that on to all the children I come in contact with.
Captain West worked on the Chesapeake Bay, collecting oysters and crabs. He grew up a waterman in a town named Tylerton, but he can trace his family history to Cornwall, England. He remembers the first time he pulled a crab pot, took his future wife out on a boat, watched the sunset over the bay. Remembering the stories that brought him to work and to love keeps him here, the place he calls home. each with a complex, connected backdrop of nature.
I think it brings a peace to them. The students that I have, when they're outside, and it's a sensory experience as well, not just, a touching, but a smelling, and, you see so much, and you're just so alive when you're outside. There's so much going on. It is totally a unexplainable feeling that, it's a sensory experience. You hear it, you smell it, you taste it.
The intersection of families, community. It's in your hair follicles. It's in the bend of your knees, the arch of your foot. You can't leave home. You can't take it. You can't rearrange it. The farmer knows no work or act of his can keep him here. He remains in what he serves by vanishing in it, becoming what he never was. He will not be immortal in words. All his sentences serve as an art of the commonplace, to open the body of a woman or a field to take him in. His words all turn to leaves, answering the sun with mute, quick reflections. At summer's height, he is surrounded by green, his doing standing for him, awake and orderly. In autumn, all of his monuments fall. Farming must include nurturing nature while letting nature grow and thrive. It must include what Wendell Berry would consider a dance with nature and the community. Farming is inclusive of everyone. We can make ourselves whole only by accepting our partiality, by living within our limits, by being human, and not trying to be gods. By restraint, we can make ourselves whole. Family, community, and nature. They are as interconnected and essential to our world as the roots to the soil, the water to the ocean, the blood to a heartbeat. Sensing this connection and understanding it is the closest we can get to understanding nature.
My favorite memories, now when I was a younger child, my favorite memories were not of canning tomatoes and shucking corn and picking potatoes for hours on end behind a tractor. But as an adult now, those are absolutely my favorite memories, and that work ethic that it taught me, and just knowing where my food came from and how it made me feel eating my own food, those are some of my favorite memories.
Farming, gardening, and scavenging may be the most basic and common connection we have to nature. But it's not the only way we can embrace nature. If we hope to build a sustained world for future generations, we must connect, embrace, empower, and feel the passion for community and family. This intersection is where our diverse and complex world comes to a point, where we feel passion, joy, and look past individual wants and desires for the well-being of nature and others. We must have community. Without community, the good work of a single farmer or a single family will not mean much or last long. The community is an order of memories, preserved consciously in instructions, songs, stories, both consciously and unconsciously in ways. A healthy culture holds preserving knowledge in place for a long time. That is, the essential wisdom accumulates in the community, much as fertility builds in the soil. I don't know how to truly define what nature is and how humans fit into nature, but I understand the inalienable passion, desire, and love associated with family and community. I sense that in nature. I sense that the protection and preservation of it as important. In that understanding, I find our place in nature.